everyone. It's, I think, about 4:30, so good evening. Beyond Lola's introduction, you're probably wondering what I am and who I am. I'm a journalist, that's the what. Who, I'm a proud Kaduna woman, that's the who. Yes. And I'm seated next to a very proud Kaduna man. And I'll tell you in a moment why I can confidently call him a proud Kaduna man. But he hardly needs introduction. If you were here last night, then you already know that this is the winner of the 2022 Lifetime Achievement Award. Of course, Lola said that earlier. He's a professor of English at Kaduna State University. If you heard a very overzealous shout, scream in the back, I'm 100% certain it's a student of his. Are there students of Professor Giwa in the house? Okay, there are a couple at least. There are. Professor, it's a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Now, very quickly, because this is a book chat, and it's quite normal that not everyone in the room has read the book in question, this is Love in the Afternoon. Has anyone read it in the room? All right, so we have a few hands up. It's a collection of 9 short stories, fiction, and to make this a lot more, to give you guys a little expo and maybe encourage you to buy the book after this, right? It's available in the bookstore. I'll just give you a very, very brief summary of each story, okay? The very first story is called Birthday Present, and it tells of a relationship between a professor and a student that he admires. They don't follow the relationship until after. And they're not really explicit about what the relationship is till he gives her a birthday present that sends her 2 Igbo brothers, because there's an ethnic dimension to it, sends her 2 Igbo brothers running to his office to want to beat him, essentially. So that's Birthday Present. The next is Sex and Life. Sex and Life is a story of 2 old geezers. And maybe that's not... it's not a poke at the old folks in the room, but 2 old men, bachelors, who are essentially incorrigible. They follow every woman they see that catches their fancy, and the particular woman they follow at this point in time, she's married to a man that does taekwondo. Yes. And this particular man who fancies her decides to give her a present, so a present recurs here. But thankfully for him, the husband did not cut him down with the cutlass that was in his hand when he visited the home, right? So that's the second story. My boy is not as funny as the first 2, right? My boy tells the story of a young man, he's beyond 18, and he essentially sleeps with his mother's friend. And the mother's friend has a son that's his best friend as well. Yes, and he walks out of the hotel room where they've had sexual relations and sees his friend walking out and his mother walking out. Make of it what you will. You'd have to read the book to find out. Night Train. Night Train is the story of a man who believes in the power of overcoming his addiction to the bottle. He's an alcoholic, and he does well for the first 6 months or so until a drink called Night Train is introduced to him, and a woman leaves him without his car, which they find, I think, a week later. They've stripped the car of all the valuables. And Professor here will tell us of the 5 stages of drunkenness. I discovered that when I read the book. I know the 5 stages of grief. I don't know drunkenness, right? Love in the Afternoon. There's a big question, which you will answer at the end before we open up the hall, right? Why love in the afternoon? Why not in the night, in the morning, twilight, any other time, except in the afternoon? So we'll get to that. Above the Law tells the story of a woman who cheats on her husband with a judge. And when they seek a divorce, the judge decides that if she cheated on her husband, he would cheat on her as well, so he leaves her. Yes, Above the Law. X-Ray is a story of redeeming love. A man whose lover leaves him behind says that there are no sparks flying, till one day he essentially breaks his leg, has to go for an X-ray, and finds his ex-lover. Yeah, yes, his ex is there. And she decides that the sparks have returned, right? So that's X-Ray. Room 653 is very, very important because it tells the story of a man who is the epitome of the starving artist. He's a broke writer. He's first a broke journalist. I don't know what that means, being that I'm a journalist, right? He's next a broke book editor. And then he becomes a broke English teacher. Yes. But then he makes his big bucks when some excellency gives him $10,000 actually to edit his book. So maybe that's your story. You're waiting for room 653 and the excellency with $10,000. The final story is the story of Badria. Badria is, she's disabled, right, in multiple ways. And at the end of the story, you find out that she's been raped. And they know she's been raped because she's pregnant, 2 months pregnant. So we're gonna get into all of this. It's a mix of a few laughs and a few very serious matters. Professor?
Thank you, you've done a good job.
Right, I've done justice
Yeah,
summarizing. Do you guys feel better knowing something about the stories? All right, great. Now, I did want to open it up to you guys to select which one piqued your interest the most, so we would start from there. Any takers? X-ray. Sex and life. Because Lola brought me here, I'm going to go with her. Sorry, she overrules you. It wasn't Lola. All right, so you get your, okay, X-ray. So, Professor, X-ray, the story of redeeming love in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But you and your wife yesterday depicted a love that is enduring as opposed to something that broke and had to be fixed. Yeah. What prompted the story?
You see, I believe, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am daring to say good evening because sometimes this particular hour of the day confuses me when I am greeting people. Sometimes 4 o'clock is afternoon, sometimes 4 o'clock is evening. So pardon me if there is no sun outside. I want to say good evening. Now, what informs my love themes generally, that's what I should have started with, is that the nature of my stories in the beginning were voluminous, those who know me. From I'd Rather Die, from Fatica with Love, Marx on the Run, they're fairly voluminous books. And since I'm a teacher, I discovered that students' number one enemy is a thick book. You give them a book about 200 pages, believe me, they look for summary. If they look for summary, they will not read the summary. They will ask their classmates to read the summary and summarize the summary for them. Except for the serious artist-minded, these are the ones who take us seriously. So when I discovered this, I gradually opted for the short story. Now, it has so many advantages. It gives you room to interrogate so many issues, deftly, briefly, and then it makes your reader comfortable because he can read one story at one sitting. Now, the love thing is that the inundation of sadness, chaos, banditry, stealing, maiming, killing is so all over the place that actually some people are expecting if there is a new book, it's going to talk about banditry. I said, for goodness sake, if I go to the market, there is enough horror. If I go home, there is enough horror. If I go to villages, there are enough horrors. I'm from Fatica, I can't go to my village again. So why would I now inundate my readers with another sad story? With another chaos, with another story of banditry, with another story of kidnapping, with another story of killing? No. If you are going to buy my book, you must be justified to have comfort and a little laugh. You must be justified to find your children smiling. Daddy, what are you smiling at? No, don't worry, it's this Audee. When they ask you, you dare not tell them it's about sex. No, you just say, is this Audee? Okay, Daddy, can I read it? Then you now say, no, it's adult only. But you see, the whole idea is that since for me, the book provides a means for escape, I thought it should provide a means of escape for my readers. So that is the essence. That's why it is over-infested with love. Now, coming to the redeem love, and You see, Nabilah is a very shrewd one. She used yesterday's experience. And you see, I don't want to repeat what happened yesterday, except that I can't help myself. You see, what I told His Excellency was a very simple fact. If you feel genuine love, I think there are only two kinds of love on this earth. One that is genuine, that is whether it is requited or not, the love that you don't expect anything from, the kind of love a mother has for her child, that's one genuine love. That's the one I expect, that's the one I feel. And this mother of mine chose this particular love of mine. So if I love my mother so well, I should love my wife so well. That's why you saw what you saw yesterday. You understand? And I am not ashamed to say it. I'm so proud of that woman. Wherever I go with her. The only thing is that some of you didn't say it. His Excellency didn't say it. I sap her, literally speaking. You see her size? You see my size? You know who the enemy is. I serve her emotionally. I serve her sexually. I serve her materially.
Why not?
When you see a woman this tiny, and then you see a husband this big, I mean somebody is shortchanging somebody else.
So from what you're saying, she's a satisfied woman all round.
Yeah.
Right.
She does.
That's what
she does.
To know.
So, but you see, this is an ideal kind of relationship.
Right.
So when I go through life, I discover that most relationships are not like mine. And then, when I look at X-ray, for instance, I discover that people break up for flimsy of reasons. My philosopher said, when you see people argue, the reason for the argument is usually not the one they are talking about. So when you have a long-standing relationship, sometimes you will accidentally pour soup on his trouser. He will say, I know do again. But it's not the soup that is the problem. The standing battle had been there for a long time. So when this woman said she's not marrying her guy again, she's not doing anything again, he left her alone. Then when he missed her in the hospital, they regenerate. The love started all over again. Now what I'm trying to show you is that in every situation, you have loves that break and mend on their own. That's the essence of that story.
Of X-ray.
We now take the advantage of showing the inefficiency of some government hospitals. That is the centrality of the story. We hide behind love and tell the truth. Just like some men hide behind love to look for sex. Okay. Or like some women hide behind love and look for money. I mean, it works both ways. So
are there some guilty people in the hall? Or do you know some people like that? Okay, all right. I won't expose you guys. Now, so Professor just talked about something, the underlying bits of his stories, and literally in every story you find something. So there is a story where you talk about, this book was published in 2019, by the way. So there is a book where, there's a story where one of the characters is making a journey and is afraid of being kidnapped on the road, right? He's journeying from Kaduna to Abuja. Most of his stories are set in Kaduna, and perhaps we'll just take off from there, right? There's something very exciting about reading it. I graduated from Ahmadu Bello University, and I noticed Abu sites in the building. Abu sites, yes, that's right. Naturally ahead. Thank you. So, bad Bele people. Now look, in Professor's book, right, if you've never been to ABU, you will find some things. So he talks about social center. He talks about Love Garden. He talks about Amina Hotel, Hostel, Ribadu. All of these places. And it's been a while since I was back in school. So reading it was, I saw the imagery popping up in my head. I could actually see ABU unfolding. And you do something similar for Kaduna. A lot of us grew up reading foreign books. And when you read about a story set in California, I could probably explain what California feels like, not so much with Kaduna. So I'm wondering, what exactly it is that you draw from the essence of this city, this state, and its people that comes through in your book every time.
Judge Orwell, I'm sure we know him. He said in 1984, the best book on earth is the book that tells you what you know. Meaning that you are at home with the stories you know. Those of us who are this old and remember our grandparents telling us stories, we will ask them to tell us the same story over and over again. Just like music, the older it is, the better it is. The more you listen to it, the more you love it. Now, it's the same thing with a setting in a story. You are comfortable with a place you are comfortable in. This is our safe space. Kaduna is where we belong. And then there are two things about familiar setting. Those who don't know it, they want to know. Those who know it are already at home with it. You have nostalgia. Suddenly you remember we are from ABU. Incidentally, I'm from ABU. And I think I should be proud to tell you that Professor Amadou Bello, my one and only teacher, is here. I don't know whether I did ABU after him. Sir, can they see you, please? Professor Amadou Bello, please stand up. This is my teacher. Don't worry, I am even looking older than him. But this is how God made him. Now, what I'm saying is that when you read books that tell you about what you know, you get so comfortable. The stories jump up to you. You swallow them. Earlier in the morning, I told you, when you see a name in a story, you identify quickly with the name. When you see a setting in a story, you identify with it. You own it, actually. You own it. And therefore, nobody needs to explain anything to you. Now, this is what fiction does. People who are doing non-fiction cannot work like this. Do you understand? So this is why the study is important to me. And more importantly, the nostalgia thing. I was in ABU 1982 to 1985. So anytime I pick to write now, the moment I start, I just go back. This is why I do it. Thank you.
All right. So, you started talking about names, and it's very important. Northern names, especially in the mainstream, if we take a random sampling of this hall, every northerner here, northern names have sort of disappeared. They've been replaced by names that are more religiously inclined. So a lot of us have Muslim names. Nabilah is an Arabic name, right? If I stretch my hand, I'll probably touch an Abdullahi, right? I said, right, there's Abdullahi right there, second row. But Professor's books, this particular book, right, it has characters with local names. So you have Kande, you have Balarabe, you have Rababa. And I'm wondering why you chose to pick Hausa names, not Arab or Islamic names.
All right. One of my comments earlier in the morning was my respect for my traditional names. And by the way, the first day I met Kadaria, like 2017, when she came from Kabafest, she was the first Abdul Qadir I met that is female. I never knew Abdul Qadir has the female version. So I kept wondering. And then you see, I am interested in names because names make us who we are. The strangest thing about my name, for those who know, for instance, just by the way, my name is Muhammad Awa. You understand? Because my father was religious. He loved this Arabic thing. He doesn't like pagan names. He doesn't. But you see, remember yesterday I told you he was dead before I was born. Now in Hausa, anybody born after his father's death is called Audee. Audee, as a posthumous child, automatically tells you this guy has lost his father before he was born. Meaning my name has history. My name has relevance. My name has root in culture. My name, literally speaking, has meaning wherever you go. What of Muhammad Awa? Muhammad is the name of the prophet. And I explained to you earlier, you are laughing. Awal is counting. Awal is 1. Sani is 2. Salus is 3. Rabiu is 4. Hamis is 5. Like that until you read Ashuru. And I told you, anyone who has Ashuru, I'm sorry for her. Because it means she has 10. Now, if you have Awalu, Sani, Salus, etc., why don't you have Muhammad, Aya Muhammad, Biyu Muhammad, Uku Muhammad, Udu? It's not language. So we should be able to own up to our own culture. And you see, what I know about these cultural names is that what the Arabians and the Europeans did to us. They told us that our cultures are not cultures. Their own cultures are cultures. But you see, why they make us throw away our own cultures, this is why the name thing comes in. And then when you now go and translate the meaning of English names, you have stone, you have spoon, you have bottom, you have leg, you have, for God's sake, I saw disease. Disease, Oyibo name, disease. Please, next time you are watching the end of movies, be careful, just be reading those credits. You don't believe what you are saying. If a man can name himself disease and then record it for everyone, so why don't you just take our own? Damina, Ana Rua Baba. That it makes sense because when you see people, you know who they are. And this is why you see the names you see here.
Quite right. I'm just wondering, how many people here are nostalgic for northern names, Hausa names, traditional names? Would you like to see that back in our culture? Only 1, 2 hands. How many of you have met a Kande? Do you know the name? How many don't know the name? If I take a random sampling of Southerners in the room, they'll tell you that northern names are, I'm sorry, I keep calling Abdullahi. If you are Abdullahi, sorry, your name is still very fantastic, but yes. All right, so another recurring theme. In 2 of the stories in Love in the Afternoon, right, there are characters, female characters who have a disability.
Yeah.
I narrated the story of Badria. Badria had a disability from very early on. She can't walk, she can't talk, she can barely move her hands, and then they find out that she's 2 months pregnant. In fact, what I'd actually like to happen is, Professor, if you don't mind, I'd actually like you to read from it. I've marked out a part. Just a moment, please.
All right. You know, Nabilah is the boss now. Only she can command me to read.
Who am I, sir? I've not reached your level.
The 2 did not say anything. I am frustrated because I cannot, for the life of me, imagine who could do a thing like this in this house. I pity the poor girl because she does not even know what is happening. I am filled with disgust because I know only a man can stoop to this lower than animal level of human depravity. But what man? The question was obviously rhetorical. Barode and Baria made no attempt to answer. They did not have any answer to give. It was the custom that was scraping and scooping at the inner walls of their hearts, demanding an answer. Yet there was no answer. There were only 2 men in the house. One was Alhaji Barau, Bara'atu's husband, Badaria's uncle, in whose care Badaria had been for the past 20 years. It was inconceivable that he would do anything like this. Besides, Alhaji Barau had class. He had money. He traveled abroad at the drop of a hat. No, he could not be the one. In fact, what were they thinking of? If he wanted to do anything like that, he would have since done it. Not now that he was advancing in years and his fortune was gradually dwindling. That left Badaru, the son. He was young, about Badaria's age, maybe a year or 2 older, and he liked her so much. Baria was almost 100% certain Badaru could kill any man who will come near Badaria with anything less than a honorable intention. And yet, there were only 2 men in the house.
Would you like to hazard a guess as to which of these men is the culprit? You have the father on one end. He's much older. He's affluent. He can again jet off to the Caribbeans at the drop of a hat. And you have the son, who is a young man around Badria's age. He loves her deeply. He's the most patient person with her. Who do you think is the culprit? Okay, if you say his father. If you say the sun, okay, it's an even number. Now, I'll take your mind away. If you want to know who it is, you'd have to buy the book. Right? I'm sorry, I can't tell you who it is. But in this story, Professor touches three interesting and important things: disability, rape, and abortion. In this story, they agree to abort the baby, right? They agree to terminate the pregnancy. And this is a conversation not just in northern Nigeria, right, in the entire country, and in much of Africa that we do not have conversations around abortion. So I'm wondering what made you decide that you were going to touch that story and touch it in a way where when they offered the option, it wasn't even a question. They didn't debate it.
Yeah, the abortion solution to cases of deliberate or inadvertent misconception are things that sometimes are a necessity. Now, in the case of Baderia, who is suffering from multiple disability, you have seen autistic children, right? Who is, let me tell you the origin of that story. Who knows Betori Home in Zaria? Betori Home in Zaria. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you know Betori Home, then you know what it means to define human misfortune. You know what it means to have helpless people. You know what it means to people who are multiply disabled. Have you ever entered a house where they say prayer is forbidden? In Betori Home, there is no prayer. In Betori Home, you have multiple autistic children who have no hope. They are just living there to die. And these people are my children. I used to go to them on a weekly basis. So one day, a particular one who could not even talk, let alone walk, or even eat, the way I describe the area is exactly the way that lady is. And so when I went, I was touched by something. I saw excitement in her eyes. I saw love in her eyes, but she could not articulate it. She could not, she was less than an animal. Even to drink water, they had to be dropping water little by little in her mouth, let alone masticate anything. Then the woman said, sir, do you know the Baderia is menstruating? When you look at her, you look at an animal. So how do you see a god menstruating? Have you ever seen a god menstruate? You understand what I mean? So it took me by surprise. I said, this is a human being after all. So she could be raped because there were young people there. That's when I got the idea. But then when she gets pregnant like that, who takes responsibility? Those people are better off dead, really. And the end result of abortion, the negative result, is usually death. Now, since they could not kill her directly, they raped her, and then in the process of aborting the child, she dies. It gives you a kind of justifiable end. I don't know whether I'm making sense. And this is how she dies. But you see, the discussion on abortion in the North is something that the people frown on. The religion frowns on. Nobody accepts it. Yet, I dare say, nowhere it is done so flagrantly as it is done in the North. We are so hypocritical about it that you have people who are sponsoring their children, women sponsoring their children, go and do it if you like, die. Just don't bring shame to my family. You have fathers who say, hey, who got you pregnant? Go and do away with it. It was before they say, come and marry her. Now, go and abort it. At that time, nobody remembers God. Nobody remembers they're killing somebody. Nobody remembers anything. All they want is, they have a special prayer. God, don't disgrace me on this earth. If you can't, disgrace me in heaven. But here, leave me alone. So they had better be disgraced in heaven than to be disgraced here. And this is the underlying principle. So, madam, abortion is not sacrosanct. It is not as prohibitive as you think. It is happening seriously under our noses. And they are becoming adept at it. And that's why I describe it in detail. So that those who don't think we know, we know.
Just in case you're wondering, when he was reading the excerpt, he did say scraping and scooping. It's kind of how it's described, the process of abortion. It's described that way, the scraping and the scooping of the womb. I'm sure there are some doctors in the room that will correct us if we are wrong. But again, this is giving you an idea, right, of some of the social issues that the professor touches, even though these are fictional stories. They're still drawn from life experiences, which we've heard from essentially some of the things that you've been touching on. The next thing I want to point to is My Boy, the story of the young men who, well, I don't know the story of the other boy, right? But the main person that you carry the story from and through, he essentially gets coerced into sleeping with his best friend's mother. And he's a young boy, right? And again, I did mention earlier that when he walked out of the hotel room, he saw his mother also walking out with the son of the woman he had just slept with. Sounds like film trick, right? Change the channel. All right, but look, setting that aside, there's still the important point there. When young men, it seems like sexual conquest, essentially, for a young man to sleep with a woman that old. And in some cases, in some conversations, some young men think that it's a plus when the person they're sleeping with could essentially be their mother. But here you talk about the influence from the women's perspective.
Yeah.
Why don't we discuss sexual abuse of young men in the North?
Yeah, they discuss it, but they don't discuss it openly. The previous session, I refuse to talk because I know we're coming to this. We talked about sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual violence, almost always in one directional style. Men abusing women, uncles abusing girls. All the time, people look at the men as the culprit, as the guilty party. Now, I have always stood against this thing. Women and men have the same feeling. They have the same anger. They have the same abandonment. And in recent times, we know when we're almost afraid to say that this guy is a man or a woman, you are no longer sure who he is. Before there was this dichotomy, either a man or a woman. Now you are no longer sure. Is he man? Is he woman? Is he transgender? Is he LVT? Is he LVT? What is the name? LGBT. Is he gay? But my point is, when are we going to own up to the reality that our elderly women actually sexually molest our younger girls, younger boys? When are you going to wake up to this reality? When are you going to look at the young man that you pinch his cheek and say, oh, my little husband? And then the next thing you know, because the boy is about 10 years old or 12 years old, you will have an erection. You say, shameless boy. You don't find anything wrong with what you did, but you are finding something wrong with his reaction. This thing happens all the time. And you see, once we do it, the women know that it's true, it happens. So, we dare to go a step further to say it's not just at the level of harassment, it also happens at the level of execution. So that the story will be interesting, it should be known that the ideal women who actually have excuse to go about raping children old enough to be their sons are all over the place. That story took shoot from a day I was called upon to settle a case between a 200-level student and a 50-year-old woman in my school. 50. Her excuse was that her husband had 3 wives and he lives in Abuja. He gives her money, but money cannot buy her sex. So when he was away, the boy was actually sleeping with her. She was paying him. 200-level student. And she's a married woman. Hausa Muslim woman in Kaduna. And she went and told her younger sister, who is a Hausa Muslim woman also living in Kaduna, and she was telling her how good this 22-year-old boy is. The younger sister stole the boy's phone number from the elder sister.
Mind you, it's not film trick this time around.
When she stole the phone from her older sister's phone, she reached out to the boy and blackmailed the boy into sleeping with her. This one is not fiction now. What I try to do in my boy is to look sane. I want to go to heaven. That is why I do it like that. But now I'm telling you the truth of what happened. So what happened was that after, when the boy was calling the younger sister in the presence of the older sister, you know, when women do these things, they don't put names. They memorize the number. They are so smart, you don't see anybody's name. So when the elder sister saw a number on her younger sister's phone, he said, pick it now. She refused. Pick it now. She said, I swear, if you don't pick this number phone, I will disgrace you. That's when the fight started between sisters, same father, same mother, who are all married to different men.
So,
Then I was the dean of student affairs. Then the matter came to me. I don't tell you I was disgusted, because I like finding fun in whatever I do. I say, please, I don't just repeat the story to me.
So you know that there's this thing they say that life is stranger than fiction. Apparently, this is what we're seeing. We're gonna take questions shortly, right? Very soon. I remember one Kabafest. I don't recall if it was 2018 or 2019, where in the hall we were discussing sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual abuse. And I think the question was asked about how many women had been sexually harassed, and they had to stand up, and the hall looked full. And I'm not going to ask the question this time around, right? Because I want to ask it about men. And really, from what the professor has said, my question to us, and it's a rhetorical question, it's just to go home and think about it. When really are we going to start talking about sexual assault on our boys and our men? It's just as important.
Thank you.
Now, Professor, I'm going to wrap up my bit with the story that, if I'm being honest, was my least favorite. Birthday present, right? The birthday present was a set of underwear, right? The professor bought it for the lady, his love interest. And, you know, if you turn it the other way, a lot of us women, and they're always yabbing us about it, you know, when your male friend is celebrating his birthday, you buy a pair of boxers, briefs, and it's acceptable. Is it acceptable the other way around? It is? Lingerie. Okay, Mariam says if it's lingerie. So if you buy the pants, the usual one that, you know, you see 10-year-olds wearing, you're in trouble. But here's why birthday present was my least favorite. It tells the story of a young lady, right, who essentially accepts the advances. They're not untoward, they're not malicious. They're both, it seems consensual, right, the advances of her professor. And he's very old school in his approach of how he feels about her. But when I read the story, the lady seemed very one-sided. She didn't seem like a multi-dimensional character, because I couldn't see myself in her. And maybe you would say that there are women who would be like her, right? But I don't see myself meeting my professor and speaking to him for the first time. He offers me a ride. I will cordially accept, but I'm not going to continue to accept his advances and feel comfortable, especially if I don't share the same feeling. So I'm wondering why, in this case, Ngozi, the character, was fully accepting of how he felt.
Characters I draw from real life. That's number one. And women the world over get overwhelmed by the presence of the man they desire. It is not a weakness for you to be unable to say no, even if you want to say yes, because the superimposing character of the male figure before you is such that you just wait and hear what he has to say. You understand it because you are not me. I am this big in size, I am this big in age, and yesterday Kabafest made me even bigger. So by the time I go and talk to a 16-year-old, she's going to be more than overwhelmed. She'll not be able to say, hey, sorry, you look like my father, please go away. No, she will be demurred because she wouldn't know, am I serious or am I not? This is the Ngozi situation. She actually didn't believe the man was serious in the beginning. And in any case, the man was not marrying her, the man was not going to have sex with her, the man was just simply in love.
Okay, my final question. Why is love happening in the afternoon and not any other time of the day?
Are you talking to the book or to me?
To you. The book has its answer. There's a reason why it's love in the afternoon in the book.
Yeah.
But to you in particular.
You see, we Hausa people are a shy lot. You understand? When I was growing up, in fact, you do not talk to girls in the afternoon if you want to marry them. Love it happens usually in the evening. You go to their house, you stay outside, they call the girl out, you stay, you talk to her, you go back in the evening when the sun is down. If you see a man and a woman talking in the afternoon discussing love, inshallah, that woman is a divorcee or a widow. Now it's automatic because that class has no shame. That's the classification when I was growing up. Now, unfortunately, today, they have inverted the whole equation. Now, the father will say, who the hell are you coming to my house in the evening for? Who knows what you guys do in the night? So it's safer for you to come in the afternoon and do what everybody is seeing you. This is the generality of the situation. You know? And I think the metaphor of love in the afternoon in the book will be explained to those who are interested to buy the book. It's still available at the bookstore after it. Then the last item on the agenda, open that place where we mentioned the 5 stages of drunkenness, because
yes, the
I'm
5
interested in that
stages of
place. For
drunkenness.
those of us who love the bottle here,
That's in Night Train. Let's see if I can find it. This is page 61.
okay, at the beginning of this conversation, Nabilah said
I don't know the 5 stages of drunkenness.
for those of us who love the bottle so much, especially those of us who are visiting Kaduna, and for some of us who have been drinking all our lives, you may want to know that you have not been drinking unscientifically. You should know that there is a scientific basis, an explanation for your drunkenness and your behavior, and whether after the last bottle you are able to wake up tomorrow or next week. It's not all the things you do are not by accident, and we have names for them, and it's not created. It's there in your dictionary. I'll list there for you. You know where you belong. I'm talking about those who drink and who experience it. Your conclusion about my own state is your problem. Within the next few hours, he traversed the 5 stages of drunkenness. Number 1, jocose. Jocose. Number 2, verbose. Number 3, bellicose. Number 4, lachrymose. Number 5, comatose. Oh, you are familiar with that one. Now, to the uninitiated, the first stage, which is jocose, is a jocular stage in which everything they said was lighthearted and funny. That's the beginning. The second stage was the stage when the drinker's words were supreme. No one else seemed to be making any sense but him. And he made sense in so many words. That is, he talks a lot at this stage. And he did in so many words. Hence the name verbose. Bellicose is that stage when verbal aggression held sway. Everything he says is going to be turned into a fight. In fact, at this level, he was too willing to fight mentally. Luckily, physically, he doesn't have the strength. When at this stage, the strength to even balance normally disappeared. Consequently, the subject, unless he stops drinking, is propelled into the lachrymose stage. Lachrymose stage is the stage where he's likely to cry at the slightest prompting. Here he is prone to cry at the slightest prodding. Notice that up to this moment, there is no attempt to stand up from the table. At this stage, the wisest position is to remain where he is. If the subject continues belaboring his liver and kidney, the distance between him and the urinal will continue to shorten until he begins to ease himself where he is. The next stage is the comatose stage. This is the last stage. This varies from a few minutes of seeming sound sleep on the table to a few days of complete blackout.
All right, the 5 stages of drunkenness, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take questions now. And we're going to start with Kadria for a number of reasons. Professor already mentioned her name, and perhaps you will give him an answer very quickly. So if we can have a mic over here, please.
Hi, Prof. That was very enjoyable. I'm going to go look for the rest of your books. Thank you very much for that engaging conversation. So just on my name is actually from Laylatul Qadri, the Night of Power.
Okay,
it's not a direct opposite of Abdul
Qadir. That's the good one.
Okay, so I was named from the Night of Power.
Okay.
It just means one who's been made powerful by God. That's the meaning of my name.
Okay.
My question really is, and I want to put context behind it, is a simple one, because I just want you to help me understand why you write. And I say that because the issues you tackle are very uncomfortable issues within the northern setting. These are conversations that are important, but which we refuse to have. Like you said, we're very hypocritical. We like to pretend. And so I'm interested in knowing whether you've sort of made a deliberate effort to write in order to sort of counter this, or because some people will tell you they write because they must. My mother says she writes because she must. You know, she's a compulsion, right? It's when, I mean, as kids, she would leave the kitchen and start writing, and there's nothing we can do until that demon is on paper. We are not eating, you know? So yeah. I'd like to get a sense of sort of the things that drive you, whether you deliberately go out to write about these issues, or do you write about other things as well? Why do you write?
Yeah, to answer your question simply, I deliberately write about these issues because nobody is comfortable writing about them. And I stand to be challenged. I am a traditional title holder in my village, typically Hausa rural village Fatika. And then when people read it and then they are unable to really come to terms with the reality of what is on the ground. Sir, you mean you are saying this? My question is what I'm saying wrong? My prayer is that somebody will take it up from there. Abubakar does. Yeah, Abubakar does. And he's still being chided. By the way, they have not left him alone. Me, they leave me alone. Thank you.
All right.
My name is Faisal Tijani. My question here is that I am with so many upcoming writers, and we all know what this writer's block is. And there is this particular part of it that writers have drafted books that they've started writing, but they couldn't finish. It's not that it's insomnia, but if you ask them why they couldn't finish the book, they can't tell you a particular reason. So is it that it's a general something like every writer goes through that, or you particularly don't go through that? Thank you.
Every writer experiences writer's block, but there is a medicine for writer's block. If I said it earlier today on the other session, that writers who write are better than writers who decide to write. There are writers who depend on spontaneity. Writers who do it naturally are better. Now, if you are waiting for inspiration to come, believe me, inspiration is a very hot stress. The day you are waiting for her is the day she will have menstruation. So what do? You go out of your way making her to work for you. You understand? this renowned Stephen King, horror writer, he's one of my favorite when it comes to nonfiction. He said what he does to fight block is that he created 30 minutes a day for writing. There is a chair in his room. Every day between 6:30 and 7, he will sit on that chair and write rubbish. Whether it makes sense or not, he must write. So at the end of the day, he was like writing 10 pages in 30 minutes. Then at the end of every day, now at the end of the month, he will have so much rubbish, he will throw it away. Now, once you do that, every time you pick the pen, something will come. Now, I know your example. The example you are giving is that you try the story, cat or Catrian, then at the center, you discover that even to spell if, you are wondering whether it is F-I or I-F. I know that we experience it, all of us. The good writers tell you, forget it for that period. Go and do something else. Come back 1 month later. I don't tell you to do that. Once you cannot spell if, leave the writer there, go and spell with, and start writing something else. You can write 2 stories at the same time, 3 stories at the same time. So when you have block here, the block will open somewhere else. This is what I do. Yeah.
When one window closes, a door opens. Over there, there's a gentleman with his hand up, I think a blue and white cap.
That's my student wanting to ask questions.
Please introduce yourself as a student of Professor Giwa.
No,
so that
it's the lady there.
Oh, it's over there. Okay, yeah, so we'll get her question.
Thank you very much. I'm Umar Megishiri, and good afternoon, everyone. First, I actually want to ask a question in relation to the topic in question. So whenever we are talking about the imagination, we'll be talking about the reflection of the real life most of the times. So, sir, how does the pre-contemporary life of humans goes in relation to the maybe contemporary life of this sexual crisis we are talking about? As if I get it right, your book usually is more concerned about the gender issue. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, my friend, sorry. Don't be shy when you are dealing with me. My books have high concentration of sexual content. I am not ashamed, I'm not a hypocrite. I talk about it the way it should be talked about. And in case you do not know, my children are here. They are my first audience. They read my books, they get shy, they get disgraced, but they read them. You understand? What's the student? Yes?
Right. Please, if we can get a mic to her over there. She's wearing a blue hijab.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Well, my name is Fatima Habib Damagum, and sir, you're truly an inspiration for everyone here. And I just have 2 short questions, and the first one is, if you are to tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be? And also, do you view writing as a kind of spiritual practice? Thank you.
No. Writing is not spiritual. Writers are just crazy. There's nothing spiritual about being crazy. Anybody who wants to imitate God, you know that he's half mad. Anybody who is an artist who can make you cry or laugh, like some of my brother here, you know, we are just mental cases, all of us. But the important thing about the advice is that, yes, we do behave like we are possessed, like we have spiritual nonsense. No. That's why you look at us as if we are larger than life. We are very, very ordinary, except when creativity takes over, we become something else. And anybody who can live with us has to be partially crazy too. Ask Lola.
How many crazy people are in the house? There you have it. Local.
All right. So the advice I am giving to younger people is write what you feel. Whether you have money or not, whether you have story or, in fact, whether you know English or not, write what you feel, because the time you will have to correct it would come. Now, when you have the time, do the writing. You can make excellent names later. All of us are lucky the way we were. Yesterday, I told His Excellency that, you should know, my wife knows, everybody here knows that, I went to secondary school without knowing one word of English. Not one word of English. It's my singular pride. All the Ajabo people who could speak English like the Queen, I don't know why they are now, but I am the one who is receiving award. So, be dogged in what you want to do. This is what I am. And I told you yesterday that in my entire family, from my parents to my siblings, I'm the only one who went to school. That is why I do my best for my kids. So doggedness, yes. Don't get disappointed. And my friend, forget writer's block. When it comes, block it and continue. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Audee T Giwa, that's our time today.
Rakama